Okay, I'm going to try something a little bit different here, and I'm going to see if this seems to be a better method on doing some live feeds, because I got stuff up on the board, but there's been all kinds of events that have been taking place, and I want to share this stuff with you guys and show you the actual effects of, following the actual due process of law as it's written. So that said, I'm going to start with, and I may pause this a little bit and key up specifics related to where I'm going with this, kind of give you the synopsis of where we started and where we are now, and how we can pretty much gauge, how these things are going. So that said, let's get started. And I'm going to go into starting with, obviously, the documents. Now, the first one I'm going to start with is, this is going to be kind of jumping around a little bit, because based on what's going on in current events right now, there was a meeting that just took place in the White House. President Trump just invited Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and I'm going to play an excerpt from that, to the White House to have a meeting. And one of the things they discussed in this meeting was criminal justice reform. Now, this goes back to, this complaint is from December of 2017. Okay, this goes to the part where this is the injunctive relief that I sought. Okay, so let's go down to paragraph 3. As for punitive punishments for these actors is concerned, my suggestion is for them to endure the same journey in purgatory to which I was unjustly forced to walk alone. That said, instead of loss of citizenship and exile, or the death penalty as written in the Constitution and U.S. Code, the only fitting punishment that would be just under the law in a civilized society is for these actors to be forced to continue from inside the prison walls, and to free all those individuals who were unjustly convicted and from which they profited. Okay, now the methodology and the ideology that I chose in the form of the maxim of law that you're looking at now, I will translate that for you, is, let's see, here we are. One who offends unwittingly must make good knowingly. So that's what this maxim of law means right here. One who offends unwittingly must make good knowingly. So here's where I also hit the non-violent offenders first. So when you're starting to see a lot of this talk about non-violent offenders, I first made this suggestion in January of 2017. Or I'm sorry, December of 2017. Here we are in December of 2018, right? A year after I filed this lawsuit. And we're talking about, you're seeing it on live television, and I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to play it for you. Nonviolent offenders first, right? Get them out. But instead of money as payment, they receive a point of reduction of sentence for every unjustly incarcerated person, including clearing their name, they free from jail and make whole again, right? So going back to those maxims of law, right? And I've actually talked about this one on the show, so you might even recognize it. So this particular one that I chose here is, I don't have my glasses on, so you have to kind of bear with me here for a second. it says, here it is. Equity wishes the plundered, the deceived, and the ruined above all to have restitution, right? That's why I put that maxim of law right there. And I believe this one is what is necessary is legal, or what is necessary is lawful. Yeah, what necessity compels, it justifies. That's this maxim of law right here, right? So, again, this is not just me, addressing what I believe to be a necessary reform at the time because of my current casework at the time. And I won't go into that right now because we've discussed it on the show multiple times. So let's go to new share. And Ted Cruz actually just aptly described this. So I'm going to play this excerpt from Sean Hannity, and I'm going to let him tell it in his own words.
Sean, I think you're exactly right. The American people have for a long time been frustrated with Washington, frustrated that too many elected officials don't follow through on their promises, and they want us to do what we said we would do. I watched that whole exchange with the president, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and I think the president was terrific that he was standing up and saying, we're going to keep our promise. We're going to secure the border. We're going to build the wall. And I'll tell you, one of the surest indications of how unhappy the Democrats were in that exchange is over and over again, Nancy Pelosi says, can we turn the TV cam off? We're not supposed to be doing this publicly. Right. You could tell they're on the losing end of the argument when she's scared that cameras are showing that she and the Democrats are for open borders and the president is fighting to do what the American people want.
I'm going to stop right there. Sorry, Ted, with the eyes closed bit. But this goes back to what we've said on the show about the star chambers and secret meetings and how they do all this crap behind closed doors, right? So what you're seeing here is Ted Cruz pointing directly at those star chambers, kangaroo courts, secret meetings, all of that corporate bureaucratic BS, right? So let's continue on with this because this is where it really starts to get good.
Which is secure the border, build the wall, and keep our country safe.
Well, and I was down with Rick Perry on the border and on boats and helicopters. I've been down to the border from the Rio Grande through San Diego 13 times. I sat through a security briefing with Governor Perry, 642,000 Texans, victims of crime in a 7-year period. Here's my question, though. And by the way, I got to give Lindsey Graham credit when he stood up to Justice Kavanaugh in that case against what was happening to him. Here's my question. Everybody seemed to fear a government shutdown. Don't essential services continue? The elderly will get their Social Security check. Medicare continues. Our military is in place. So why always the big fear about a shutdown on something as important as our national security?
Okay, let me stop right there. This is the, where the bureaucrats and the obstructionists start to inflict that, oh my God, if we shut the government down, the world is going to explode, right? So, it is right there. It was, Sean just said it, Ted's going to confirm it, that these things, when they happen, it has nothing to do with essential services, meaning if your house catches fire, the fire department is still going to respond type of thing. So when the Democrats start with, oh, the world's going to explode, we're going to shut the government down, and we're not going to be able to, nothing's going to happen, nobody's going to get a, first responders are not going to get a paycheck, that kind of stuff. It's all hogwash, okay? So, again, I'm going to continue on with this.
Well, listen, essential services continue during any shutdown, and at this point, about 70% of the federal government has already been appropriated. So we're fighting over about 30% of the federal budget.
Now, think about that. That's significant, right? 70% of the government is already funded. They're fighting over 30%. So chances are, within that 30%, is the majority of where these trespasses of law are coming from, right? And that's the reason the Democrats want to keep them going, because if they can keep these obstructionists funded, then they'll continue to maintain their obstructionist agenda. Okay, so here we go again.
Now, I personally hope we don't have a shutdown, but I think the president is absolutely right to say the American people want the border secured. It's the right thing to do, and the Democrats are just being obstructionists. They are opposed to border security, and I'll tell you, that's a big reason why Republicans grew our majority in the Senate this election. As the president noted, winning North Dakota and Indiana, winning Texas is because the American people want the border secured.
Let me ask you about Mueller and where we are with this. First of all, your thoughts on the double standard.
This is where he's going to really start to get into the whole, the witch hunt and some of the implications of where they're going to try to use my work in the Emoluments clause and convert the meaning of the word emoluments to be something to be used against the president. And they're taking, excuse me, the Democrats, what they're trying to do is, if you can see it right here on the board behind me, they're trying to take those private sector emoluments, that profit margin, right, from when he was a businessman, and target that and, reduce him in the eyes of the people and make him look like he is, just another rich guy who's trying to seize power and blah, 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 blah. So, like I said, folks, this is where it's going to really, really, really get interesting.
Hillary Clinton, uranium one deal. Gave 20% of our uranium to the hostile nation of Russia and the hostile actor Putin. Nobody investigates that. 20% and 145 million went back to the Clinton Foundation, or the dossier, which we now know that they never vetted, but it was the foundation of this entire, the bulk of information for the FISA applications. Nobody talks about that. The money that paid for the dossier was funneled through a law firm. That would seems to me would be a campaign finance issue. But they're trying to claim Donald Trump has campaign finance issues. As a lawyer, I'm asking you, do you see that? Because I do
not. Here we go. Like I said, this is where they're trying to go after the money trail, right? And that's why I said, when you're strategizing in the corporate world, market advantage, profit margin, capital gain, it depends on which part of those private sector emoluments you're focused on. Right now, they're focused on Trump's profit margin and Trump's capital gains, which is why they keep going after him to show his tax returns and yada, 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 right? So I said, this is where it really gets hilarious.
Listen, all of these are serious allegations, and the Department of Justice needs to investigate serious allegations of criminal conduct. One of the things frustrating over the last 2 years is we have not had sufficient accountability in the Department of Justice. I think the Department of Justice should be blind to political party. I don't want a Republican DOJ or a Democratic DOJ. I want a Department of Justice that's faithful to the Constitution and the law. Right. And I'm hopeful with the new Attorney General nominee, Bill Barr, that we will see that at the Department of Justice. We need to make sure everyone's held accountable.
I had this woman, Alice Marie Johnson, on, who the president commuted her sentence. Amazing woman, 20 years, one single drug crime. How do you feel about the prison reform bill, as long as violent felons are not included?
Well, I think we're getting ready to have a major bipartisan victory, and I want to commend the president's leadership on criminal justice reform. I'm a longtime advocate of criminal justice reform. I think reducing mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug offenders makes a lot of sense.
There it is right there. Go back to, let me reshare that again, because I want to make sure we keep our focus on that. What did I say? Non-violent offenders first. I said that December of last year, a year ago to this month, and here they are talking about it. Okay, so again, this lawsuit not only went before the court, the federal court, it also went to Congress. This was when I called that meeting basically standing there telling Congress in the form of a lawsuit, which is this document I've got up on the screen. This is what we're seeing is the deleterious effects of not enforcing perjury statutes, right? How many times have we gone over this, repetitively to the point, you get so tired of, you feel like a broken record, right? So let me go back to Ted Cruz here, and we're going to let him finish up his narrative.
Far too many young black men in prison for decades for simple possession. That's not right. And so, but my big concern, and you just put your finger on it, is we should not be releasing violent criminals. Violent criminals are totally different. I draw a big line between violent and nonviolent. And so what happened last week, I drafted an amendment to this bill that excluded violent criminals, that said we're going to focus relief on nonviolent criminals, but rapists, murderers, violent criminals are going to stay in jail. The sponsors of the bill in the White House, they took my amendment word for word, and when they took my amendment, I'm now supporting it. I'm a co-sponsor. I urged Mitch McConnell to take it up and schedule a vote, and just today he announced we're going to do it. I think we're going to pass this, which will be a major, major bipartisan victory, and I think it's in the interest of justice.
I do too. All right, Senator, well said. Good to see you.
Okay, now I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit, and let's bring this up to speed. Share this new. Okay, let's go into the SCOTUS question. Okay, and this is where my parliamentary inquiry becomes really, really, really important. Okay, when I go into how I constructed the question, for example, who I am, right? What my job description is, right here. Justice comes before liberty, and justice is to be denied to no one. Now, because we have seen what we've seen in these last few recent years, okay, we see what happens when bad actors infiltrate the Department of Justice. And it's not just us having this problem. DC has been having the same problem. All we had to do was to bring forth a methodology through proper petitions. So I said, this is why I wanted you guys specifically to take notice of, these types of things, these ideologies. This is why when you kids were here with me, we went to church on Sunday, and, I was literally going to teach you guys from the ground up. And the ground up is the ideology, these maxims of law, these core fundamental principles. Why you have a gut feeling the way you have a gut feeling, right? So if we wanted to try to explain where those gut feelings come from, okay, it's this ideology, and it's in our style and form of government comes from Latin, the language of Latin, okay? So this one here being the most fundamental, which is why I chose it first. Justice comes before liberty, okay? If we're not getting equal justice under the law, we have no liberty, right? And this is why I said, so, I don't care what's going on out there in the world of social media land and all that. I could care less. It's nothing but a bunch of BS and a bunch of, pissed off people that really have, no idea what they're talking about, what they're doing, or why they're even doing it. Okay. So what happens with this notice of lien? Between you, me, and the wall, probably not a damn thing. I'm just going to come right out and say it. However, the reason that I filed it is because it is it's something in law, excuse me, a relief and or remedy in law, which allows me to bring forth, they say in your 12B motion, it's motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim on which relief can be granted. Okay, well, a lien is something that can be granted. So that's one of the reasons why I said, well, okay, let's just play. I'm going to show you how loss prevention does it. And here's the, kind of the basic things that actually, comprise the lien. And that, of course, is the lien document itself. And that's all in here, and it's all filled out properly. Part of that lien is the remittance, right? That's the remittance for damages, right? This thing up here. And there's that same maxim of law, right? Let's see. Equity requires, here, I'll just reread it out of the book again, make sure that we have it correct. And it just takes a second to find it. Yeah, here it is. Equity wishes the plundered, the deceived, and the ruined above all to have restitution. Okay? So, under the circumstances, because of what they pulled with your dad on May 1st to basically reinstitute debtor's prison, right? That's what they did. And that is a pyramid scheme. There's where the pyramid scheme came from. So much so to the point they're belligerent even about putting it out there. This is, if you go to the Ohio website, it doesn't look just like this. Matter of fact, this pyramid is over to the right of this paragraph. But just for the simplicity of showing it on paper, I literally took this sucker and copied it from their website and pasted it right here. So this is the pyramid scheme, right? What do we know about pyramid schemes? Not only are they're not legal, they're not lawful, right? So we couldn't do it in the private sector. Government, you can't do it either. And of course, this was the state level case right here, the one that resulted in the mandate, which is this rascal right here. And this is where it really gets interesting. Case style, okay? It's Christopher Howlett versus the Florida Department of Revenue on behalf of your mother, right? Well, here's what else I said. How can the Department of Revenue represent an out-of-state litigant? That's an unlawful contract, right? There cannot be agency in two instances. Number one, there's no reciprocity, right? In other words, Ohio and Florida are literally oil and water. Okay, they don't agree on anything. So because you can't establish a reciprocity, meaning a mutual benefit, right? And I always use an example of people, they exercise contracts, legal contracts, lawful contracts, whether they realize it every day. I don't care if you walk into a gas station and drop your $5 on the counter or $20 on the counter and pay for your gas. Okay, that's a lawful transaction. That's a lawful contract executed properly. So because this Florida Department of Revenue cannot act on behalf of your mother because she's not a citizen of the state of Florida. So there's no standing there, right? This is where we go into the tactics, divide and conquer. So I divided the Department of Revenue from your mom, right? And said, guess what? You can't do that. And when the court came forth with its per curiam, which is a unanimous decision pursuant to the brief that, was a little further down here, the one I just showed you, the case style, it's me versus them. When they brought forth the action, it was them versus me, right? So when I went under that, again, that maxim of law, res excipiendo fit actor, the defendant by plea or exception becomes plaintiff. The plea or the exception made me the plaintiff. That's why he said, this cause having been brought to this court by appeal or by petition, after due consideration, the court having issued its opinion or decision. Well, we already know what they're going to do. They're going to dismiss, right? So, but with the dismissal, that's the reason they issued a mandate, because I said, look, this ain't anywhere near done yet. And they agreed for the simple reason that they're still 1,000+ miles away here, right? So let's go down towards the bottom here, and here's what else they know, and here's why they know it. Let's see, do I have the right? Is it this one? Yeah, that's the extortion. This is where I terminated the case in Ohio, sent the court notice of it, right? And, okay. They issued me a mandate because they know that I have a lawful order, okay, where it is, in this particular case, it was your mother was ordered to be paying me support, not the other way around, right? It wasn't until after the fraud upon the court, right? And how do we know that? Well, this issue was filed in, this was October 13th, 2009 at 9:50 something a.m., okay? So, and this was the guardian ad litem in our case. So obviously, if the guardian ad litem sided with your dad in the initial, issue, then guess what? That only further confirms that even, this is what cracks me up. Youngstown, Ohio, somebody writing a complaint against me 1,000 miles away in Ocala, Florida. Dude, how the hell can you go from Youngstown, Ohio, in that zip code, to Ocala, Florida, in this zip code, in this time frame, when they can't even place me at the scene of the crime? Haven't left Florida in 2017. So, again, that's the reason that this was unsubstantiated. And because even the bureaucracy itself had no choice but to admit that, okay? This is what I said. The Florida court cannot take an action against an Ohio court, right? Or anything in Ohio. That's the reason they had to issue this mandate, okay? They also know, because I've served them notice, and I've been very public about it. I don't, like I say, you don't see me clawing at the doors of the Supreme Court acting stupid. Nobody's dead, yada, yada, yada. They see me following due process of law, right, through this parliamentary inquiry, right? They know if they've learned one thing, they've learned this. Your dad doesn't stop, he doesn't sleep, and he's absolutely not going to quit until this bureaucratic nonsense is terminated, or at least put back in its place. And we're going to use this corporate entity for the purpose we intended it, right? And along the way, we're going to, catch a few bad actors with the door, so to speak. And of course, the phone is ringing. So here I'm going to have to pause. Okay, let me resume here. Sorry about that. That was one of those breaks in the middle of things that I could not be avoided. So anyway, as we go, we're going through this parliamentary inquiry, and what I'm calling unlawful emoluments meaning unauthorized practices of law, in that, you know, even a judge said, hey, I want to play loss prevention too, right? Remember, that's my joke. You know, I'm like, well, I've never had to mess with the courts. I was handed that off to the legal department. And they're like, well, no, I want to play too. So it's like, all right, fine. So, you know, we go down through these, you know, these legal doctrine here. And then, of course, these, you know, me with the Declaration of Independence. That's me telling them this is the basis, right? This document, the Declaration of Independence itself, is the basis of loss prevention, right? So where it comes from in law and in history and, you know, all that stuff we always talk about on the show, for purposes of this issue, how we fight these corporate bureaucracies and these little mini kings that have managed to pop up all over the place, right? That is the, you know, taking away our charters. Well, what's our charter? We petition the legislature. So when they say go to these agencies, by technical definition, that's bad legal advice, right? Every time they tell you to go to an agency, that's the wrong legal advice. You keep going and you petition your legislature. And like I said, you can use what I've put out here, you know, and that's not just for you kids, but for anybody who's watching this. It's one of the reasons I put this stuff out there. I've already done the homework for you. So if you want to use my stuff, hey, dude, have at it. You know, it is what it is. End game is the same. We shut it all down, right? So let's go back to the original state action, right? The emoluments violations I pointed out in the state action under Title 18, sections 241, 242, and 643. Okay, let's take this to what's going on in the big picture, which we're just getting. We're going to watch Trump beat up Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in just a minute here. Well, they're trying to go after Trump for collusion, which we all know is a bunch of crap because it never happened, right? They're the ones, the Democrats are the ones guilty of 242, obstruction of justice, depriving people of their right to due process under the law. And those bureaucracies are the mismanagement of government funds, right? And because every single one of them, as those lawyers, right, we can take this 28 USC 1927 and 29 USC 1109. Now, this is what I just put out there. That sanctions imposed on attorneys who abuse the judicial process. That also goes for the agencies that are abusing the judicial process. Why? Because they all have bar cards. That means they're all part of that foreign entity. That same, again, this is history repeating itself. So this is these same actors, excuse me, trying to reinstitute this same bullshit we walked away from 230 years ago. So that's why I said this is kind of cool how it works. And because there's no defense mechanism, right? Well, according to my my credential, my licensing, my fiduciary licensing, and if you read the treaties or the treaty on notaries, I'm as a mandatory, this number here means I am a mandatory reporter. So, kind of the short version, I can claim immunity as a mandatory reporter, which we did in the Texas case, and we've been over that on the show. So, because I am, again, one of those corporate bureaucrats, right? They said they wanted to play corporate monopoly. I said, okay, I'm the car. I'm right here. And my advisory capacity to Congress is right here, right? I can claim and exercise whatever the hell I want. They have to come in. The burden of proof to say that I can't do it is on the actors who are accusing me of things like, let me go back through that real fast here just for the sport of it, because that's always my favorite one. They're the same actors who accusing me of crap like this from 1,000 miles away, right? Youngstown, Ohio to Ocala, Florida, right? Again, guess who else saw that? This guy. What does it say? He is a witness, right? Witness the Honorable J.P. Cohen, Chief Judge of the District Court of Appeal in the state of Florida, 5th District, right? And the seal is right there, dated this day, September 18, 2018, right? Here's the part that a lot of people aren't comprehending. And I'm going to talk about it. I know I just went over this, but I'm going to do it again just to refresh my own memory because it's been, about an hour since I did it. This is me versus them, not them versus me, right? I switched roles on them, right? They came after me as the plaintiff. They could not prove what they claimed, and I reversed it and said, well, okay, because you can't prove it, now you're liable under the emoluments of your office. And because I knew the right word, the word being the emolument itself, when we talk about, yeah, these people swear an oath to that office, what is it they're swearing to? I mean, I swear every damn day. That doesn't mean that I'm swearing to anything, unless I'm swearing to the emoluments of, the office. So I wonder if I put it in here. I didn't. So I did do this. I'm going to pull this up for you kids real fast. I got to find it real fast here, though. The document report notice should be right in here. Muffin forfeiture mandate, assistance of counsel. I'm looking for my notary document because I want to show you right where that came from. Oh, I remember where I put it. It should be here under E-clause. A second. Finding it. Maybe in here somewhere. Maybe it isn't there. Maybe it is here. Notary commission. Here it is. This is a rascal. Yep. Okay. Here it is. I'm going to zoom in on this real quick. And this is my old one. This isn't the new one. But it says the exact same thing. When you're talking about mandatory reporting, okay, I'm reporting using the emoluments of my office. Here's my oath of office. Okay, so I'm taking my emoluments and I'm fighting their unlawful emoluments because I have a treaty that supports mine. All they have is some scope document, and we can definitively show that they're acting way outside of their scope. In my particular case, it is Article 1. Let's see. Is it this one? Yep, here it was. From Article 1 of the Florida Constitution, Section 11. Okay? I'm going to go pull that rascal up so we can say, what does Article 1, Section 11 say? Because we want to know, how do you substantiate that claim? We don't know what that Constitution says, so we need to find that out, right? Florida Constitution should be right in here. There it is. And remember, this was the Constitution at the time, so this is the document we're going off of. Article 1, Section 11, imprisonment for debt. So let's go to Section 11. And what does it say about that? Here it is. Imprisonment for debt. No person shall be imprisoned for debt except in cases of fraud. Well, now we've got a kind of a double whammy on them because of what we've already shown in the document. Going back to this thing here in January, not only was I not the perpetrator of the fraud, okay, I was the victim of the fraud, and here's how we know that, right? Somebody made a claim against me from 1,000 miles away that I didn't even know was even happening, right? And of course, the agency, that bureaucrat, had to say, oh, yeah, that's unsubstantiated. Well, where did that come from? That came from the emoluments of their office, right? So what we've got is we've got two emolument actors, meaning me and them, going head to head. The judges are just kind of standing there going, ugh. This is kind of like watching WWE wrestling with these guys going at it. And they're just kind of enjoying the show. So, that's why I said, we go back to, what the original document said. Well, what did the original document say? The original document, which is here, remember this one goes from October 13th of 2009. And at the end of that, the last page, right, there's the date, 7/1 of 2009. Said that on behalf of, actually, it started from 3/1. See, January, February. That's March 1st of 2009. Okay? This right here, what was supposed to be paid to me, not the other way around. So, again, this is not just me stating it. This is me proving it over and over and over and over again. So, what these bureaucrats are not used to is they're not used to somebody with equal standing. I talked about this. These bureaucrats, they run around like they're these little kings of the joint, and they can just go point at whoever they want. And I said, well, no, you're not, because I'm not that. You don't have that standing in law against me. They're like, well, why don't we have that standing in law? So I proved it, right? And because they can't keep it going, right, which is Trump is having this exact same issue right now, which I'm going to go into here in just a second. I'm going to share that with you. They're literally trying to promote this false narrative, this Russian collusion, right? Even though they know it's all horse hockey, right? But they're still trying to prove it so they can pervert my work with the Emoluments Clause, which is from that page 638 of the Black's Law Dictionary. Don't take my word for it. Go look up page 638 of the Black's Law Dictionary, 10th edition, and read this brand new definition that appeared in the early 90s just out of thin air. So this is why I said this is, kind of a neat science project for me, in that I get to use my my knowledge of history to finally take out some bad actors who I've been sick and tired of horsing around with for a whole long time now. And let me see here. Let me go. All right. So let's go into the border security argument and see if, in fact.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great honor to have Nancy Pelosi with us and Chuck Schumer with us. And We've actually worked very hard on a couple of things that are happening. Criminal justice reform. As you know, we just got word that Mitch McConnell and the group, we're going to be putting it up for a vote. We have great Democrat support, great Republican support. So criminal justice reform, something that people have been trying to get, how long, Nancy? Many years, many years. Looks like it's going to be passing, hopefully, famous last words, on a very bipartisan way.
Okay, let's stop right there. Sorry, Mr. President, I don't mean to interrupt the big guy, but let me talk about where that came from and why one of the reasons why we're doing this is because here it is right here. This document is posted in Amber and Stephen in you guys' group. This is the complaint brief from December of 2017, a year ago, or almost a year, a little over a year ago from today. So it's ironic, I called a meeting of 3 houses of Congress and I made the presentation through this document. And here it is now, a year later, we're watching it come to fruition. So I'm going to shut up now.
And it's really something we're all very proud of. And again, tremendous support from Republicans and tremendous support from Democrats. And I think it's going to get a very good vote. And we'll see soon enough, but it'll be up for a vote very shortly. A lot of years they've been waiting for it. The other thing, the Farm Bill is moving along nicely. And I guess they'll be voting on Friday or so, but pretty close. And we think the Farm Bill's in very good shape. A lot of good things are happening with it, and our farmers are well taken care of. And again, that'll be quite bipartisan, and it'll happen pretty soon. And then we have the easy one, the wall. That'll be the one that will be the easiest of all. What do you think, Chuck? Maybe not?
It's called funding the government.
So we're going to see. But I will tell you, the wall.
Okay, this is where it's going to start to get really interesting. These are the guys right here. This Chuck Schumer, he's the one who's been working with him and Nancy Pelosi. They've been working with these corporate bureaucrats to build all those infrastructure program projects, right? Where do they get the funding for this crap? That's the Title IV mechanism, how they're bleeding the Social Security fund dry, right? So aside from where your position and standing is in law, right? This is the mechanism, and Trump is calling them to the carpet on it, right? Because later on here, I'm going to skip ahead to a little bit where they get into this heated debate right towards the end of the video where Trump clearly points out that, look, Nancy can't even discuss this right now because they know, these Democrats know that all them and their programs, they're not lawful, right? This bureaucracy shit is what we declared independence from. So, again, I'm going to continue on here.
We'll see what happens. It is not an easy situation because the Democrats have a different view, I think, than I can say the Republicans. We have great Republican support. We don't have Democrat support. But we're going to talk about that now. We're going to see. One thing that I do have to say is tremendous amounts of wall have already been built. And a lot of wall, when you include the renovation of existing fences and walls, we've renovated a tremendous amount. And we've done a lot of work in San Diego. We're building new walls right now, and we've right next to San Diego, we've completed a major section of wall, and it's really worked well. So a lot of wall has been built. We don't talk about that, but we might as well start because it's being built right now, big sections of wall, and we will continue that. And one way or the other, it's going to get built. I'd like not to see a government closing, a shutdown. We will see what happens over the next short period of time, but the wall is a very important thing to us. I might put it a different way. Border security is extremely important, and we have to take care of border security.
I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit.
You have the White House,
Did you say Trump?
you have the White House, you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives.
See, here's where this is where they're starting to waffle. right? And Trump's correct when he says, look, I'm not going to waste the time of the House of Representatives to pass an initiative that I know I can pass if I can't get you guys to back us up in the Senate, saying, look, because he says, look, I need 10 votes in the Senate. You mean to tell me you can't give me 10 votes in the Senate to get this thing done, right? He's aptly pointing out, look, the American people voted for this because guess what? That's the reason I'm here, right? We campaigned on it, and it is what it is. And if you're going to be the ones who are going to obstruct it, I'm going to call you into this room right now and make you admit it. And here's where they admit it.
You have the vote. You should pass it.
No, we
right
don't have
now.
the votes, Nancy, because in the Senate we need 60
No,
votes.
but in the House.
And we don't have it.
Bring it up right now.
Yeah, but I can't, excuse me, but I can't get it passed in the House if it's not going to pass in the Senate. I don't want to waste time.
Well, the fact is, you can get it started that way.
The House we can get passed very easily,
Okay,
and we
then
do.
then
But
do
the problem is the Senate, because we need 10 Democrats to vote, and
That's
they
not
won't
the
vote.
point. The point is that
There it is right there. I need 10 Democrats, and you guys ain't going to play, right? It is what it is. He backed him into a corner, and all she can do is All right, good. Now I'm glad we did that. And let's see here. Let's see what old Schumer's got to add on to this, because he does bring, he does get into it.
Chuck, did you want to say
Yeah,
something?
here's what I want to say. We have a lot of disagreements here. The Washington Post today gave you a whole lot of Pinocchios because they say you constantly misstate how much the wall is built, how much of the wall is built, and how much is there. But that's not the point here. We have a
Okay, let's talk about why he's using the Washington Post. Okay, now, remember back through history. Again, we're going to go back to history. It was the newspapers were the ones that were the way these people would issue lawful notification. Okay, so let's talk about that. If you look at the font in the Supreme Court, this is called diploma. Ironically, the exact same name that they give the document that you get when you graduate. It's called a diploma. Okay? So that's why I said this is where it really, really gets fun. And if you look at newspaper titles, the Youngstown Vindicator, the Warner, the Tribune Chronicle, they're all in this exact same font. The Washington Post and New York Times, the title of their editorial, their document, is in diploma font, right? So let me go back to this is why Schumer keeps bringing up the Washington Post.
disagreement about the wall, whether it's effective or not on border security, but on the wall. We do not want to shut down the government. You were called 20 times to shut down the government. You say, I want to shut down the government. We don't. We want to come to an agreement. If we can't come to an agreement, we have solutions that will pass the House and Senate right now and will not shut down the government. And that's what we're urging you to do. Not threaten to shut down the government because let me just finish, because you can't get your way.
Last time you shut it down,
Let me say something, Mr. President. You just say my way or we'll shut down the government. We have a proposal that Democrats and Republicans will support to do a CR that will not shut down the government. We urge you to take it.
And if it's not good border security, I
It
won't
is
take it.
very good border.
Notice the word, what he says. He calls it a CR. He never elaborates on what a CR is. Okay? All he does, this is their manipulation of word salad. I'll give you this thing called a CR. He won't tell us what it is, right? This is telling a half-truth. How many of us have suffered from half-truths in court, right?
If it's not good border security, I won't take it.
It's what the
Because
board,
when you look at these numbers of the effectiveness of our border security, and when you look at the job that we're doing
you
with our
just said it is
military,
effective.
can I tell you something?
Yeah, you just said it's
Without a
effective.
wall, these are only areas where you have the walls.
We want to do
Where
this.
you have walls, Chuck, it's effective. Where you don't have walls, it is not effective.
Yeah.
Let's call a halt to this. We've come in here as the first branch of government. Article 1, the legislative branch. We're coming in good faith to negotiate with you about how we can keep the government open. See?
Okay. This is where it gets ugly. Remember, this goes to the Owen versus City of Independence Act case. You can't claim good faith if the action you're taking is going to violate state or federal law. Okay? These bureaucracies that they're trying to support violate both state and federal law, and we can repetitively show this over and over and over again, because all of these bureaucrats, all they want is, the only thing they talk about is immunity, 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 and all we end up with is trespass after trespass after trespass, to the point they're so belligerent about how they lie, right? They don't even try to hide it anymore, and Trump is calling them to the mat on this. This is where it's going to get really good.
We're going to keep it open if we have border security. If we don't have border security, Chuck, we're not going to keep it open.
We are going to have border.
And it's the same border. You're bragging about what has been done. We want to do the same thing we did last year, this year. That's our proposal. If it's good then, it's good now.
Here's the problem with that. It's not good. What just happened with the border and the caravans approaching from the south? This is an invasion. Mexico called it an invasion. Trump may have said it first, but the Mexican people agreed with them. The protests were on mainstream media. So no matter how hard these bureaucrats are trying to hide it, they cannot hide. The people see you coming. We've even found the word. You're abusing the emoluments of your office to profit and practice barratry, called in these star chambers, these secret courts, right? And they're using government funds and government buildings, emoluments. They're also using sheriff's officers, jails, right, to manage people who won't play their game. Well, guess what? I ain't playing your game. And there's a whole bunch of us that are not playing your game, because we figured out how to go right over top of you and go to the people who you've been trying to subvert us from for more than 100 years. And the fact that we're standing there and we're doing it the correct way, peaceably assembling, right? We've talked about this on the show. File the right document. That's how you peaceably assemble. That's what the language in the law means. Okay? Standing out on the corner and picketing and like that, that's called picketing. That's, yes, peaceably assembling is not as long as you're not inciting violence, right? Violent domestic violence out on the land, right? So, again, keep going.
And it won't shut down the government.
Chuck, we can build a much bigger section.
Let's debate in private, okay? Yeah, let's debate in private.
To avoid, frankly, the fact, and
we need border security. I think we all agree that we need border security.
Yes,
Is that
we
right?
do.
Good.
We do.
See, we get along. Thank you, everybody.
Say border security and the wall. Can you have border security without the wall?
You need the wall. The wall is a part of border security.
What it means to have border
Yeah,
security.
we need border security. The wall is a part of border security. You can't have very good border security without the wall. No.
that is a political promise. Border security is a way to effectively honor our
And the
responsibility.
experts say you can do border security without a wall, which is wasteful and doesn't solve the problem.
It totally solves the problem. And it's very important.
This is spiraled downwards when we came at a place to say, how do we meet the needs of American people who have needs? The economy has, people are losing their jobs, the market's in a mood. Our members are already.
Well, we have the lowest unemployment that we've had in 50 years.
Okay, let's talk about that. The market's in a mood. The market is in a mood because all this woman wants to do is obstruct justice, right? Trump brought through these little cards he's got sitting right here next to him on the desk. He showed where it's, might as well say 100% effective, where we have a wall, versus places where there is no wall.
Republican parties have lost, are losing their offices now because of the transition. People are not, the morale
we gained in the Senate. Nancy, we gained it.
Again, there's another half-truth. Yes, we did lose seats in the House of Representatives, and yes, those retiring, and it's both sides. See, what she's telling you, what she's not telling you is there are also Democrats who retired out of the House of Representatives who their staff is losing their positions in government. Why? To be replaced by the new people coming in. So there's no loss. The only thing they're doing is they're switching. So she's trying to paint a picture that ain't there. It is a lie, period. She's lying through her dentures.
In the Senate. Excuse me, did we win the Senate? We won the Senate.
When the president brags that he won North Dakota and Indiana, he's in real trouble.
The president said nothing about North Dakota or Indiana. What the hell is Schumer even talking about? This guy's a jerkwagon. Look at that smug look on his face, like he's going to be like, I gotcha. Watch how Trump takes him to task on this, because it's going to get good.
When
I did.
Let me say this.
We did win North Dakota.
This is the most unfortunate thing. We came in here in good faith, and we're entering into this kind of a discussion in the public view.
But it's not bad, Nancy.
No,
It's called transparency.
I know. It's not transparency when we're not stipulating to a set of facts, and when we wanted to have a debate with you about saying we confront some of those facts.
You know what? We need border security. That's what we're going to be talking about, border security. If we don't have border security, we'll shut down the government. This country needs border security. The wall is a part of border security. Let's have a talk. We're going to get the wall built, and we've done a lot of wall already. It's a big section. It's a big part of it. Everything that you need. It's a big part of it. We need to have effective border security. We need a wall in certain parts. No, not in all parts, but in certain parts of a 2,000-mile border, we need a wall. How much money? We are doing it much under budget. We're actually way under budget on the areas that we've renovated and areas that we've built. I would say if we got $5 billion, we could do a tremendous chunk of wall.
Okay. Did you notice that the Democrats, the smug Schumer face, he knows that the press is on his side, and they're trying to tag team Trump, right? Getting the press to answer questions that these cowards, these cowardly Democrats, won't ask themselves. So they have their little press cronies, right, do it, and then they take those statements and they put them in their publications under their diploma font, right? See, that's why I said this is how they distort the truth.
Well, we're going to see. We're going to see. Look, we have to get the word. This isn't a question. This is a national emergency. Drugs are pouring into our country. People with tremendous medical difficulty and medical problems are pouring in, and in many cases, it's contagious. They're pouring into our country. We have to have border security. We have to have a wall as part of border security. And I don't think we really disagree so much. I also know that, Nancy is in a situation where it's not easy for her to talk right now, and I understand that, and I fully understand that. We're going to have a good discussion, and we're going to see what happens. But we have to have border security.
Mr. President, please don't characterize the strength that I bring to this meeting as the leader of the House Democrats who just won a big victory.
Elections have consequences, Mr. President.
Let me just say,
And that's why the country is doing so well.
what the President is representing in terms of his cards over there are not facts. We have to have an evidence-based conversation about what does work, what money has been spent, and how effective it is. This isn't about, this is about the security of our country, to take an oath to protect and defend. And we don't want to have that mischaracterized by anyone. And
I agree with it. No, I agree with it.
So let us have a conversation where we don't have to contradict in public the statistics that you put forth, but instead can have a conversation.
There's where it goes right there. You can bet your butt that Trump verified every one of those statistics before he presented them. And her answer, the only rebuttal for her is to throw an allegation unsubstantiated, right? Is to simply throw out the allegation that the facts are not true. And Trump is saying, hey, I stand behind these facts so much, I'm willing to come out here and stand in front of God and everybody and assert my claims and prove it. You're the ones who want to go hide behind closed doors in your little star chambers, in your little secret meetings, right? So they can manipulate or try to manipulate the conversation the way they're used to doing it. So.
About what will really work and what the American people deserve from us at this uncertain time in their lives.
One thing I think we can agree on is we shouldn't shut down the government over a dispute. And you want to shut it down. You keep talking about it.
The last time, Chuck, you shut it down.
No.
And then you opened it up very quickly. And
20
I don't
times.
want to do what you did.
20 times you have called for, I will shut down the government if I don't get my wall. None of us have said
You want to know something?
You said
okay, you want to put that in
You
my
said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay, fair enough.
And I am proud, and I'll
We
tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut.
And that's exactly what I did. I said, you know what? You punks don't want to admit it. You want to stand there and you want to lie about it? Fine. Let's go back to the documents here. Here's what I said. I will take and I will put the full burden of, let's see here, why won't it work? Come on, you little bugger. There we go. Oh, paused. There we are. Okay. I created my company and said, you know what? I'm going to do exactly what Trump did. The court not only said after, and of course I did this first, and said, that's exactly what I did. I said, I'm going to take the burden of responsibility and I'm going to push this sucker right through to the end of it, right? So much so that the court even said, well, if you're going to do it, I want you to stand right here. And they picked a spot and told me to stand there. And guess what? I don't have a problem doing it. And I think that I don't know who's more surprised. The fact that I'm complying with their orders and doing exactly what I said I was going to do, or the fact that I even have to be standing there. They know I don't want to be standing there. There's thousands of other things I could be doing. Cleaning up the environment with more dead batteries and all that other crap that I've already put up on the whiteboard and showed you guys how all that works, right? So, again, here's the document. And again, you click on this right here. There's the sunbiz.org. You highlight this, you right click it, you copy it, you open this sucker up, and you can verify that this thing is what it is. It's in good standing. And I went down through and said, we're going to go back to Article 1. Where do we start? Well, actually, I started 0, right? Here's 0, and we'll get to 1 in just a minute. Well, this is me starting at 0, right? I'm reminding them you don't start at 1, you start at 0. So in our succession of law, I've assigned the Declaration of Independence as 0. So we go down through here on these principles and practices of the 10 Commandments. The law speaks to all with only one mouth, right? And what is illegal ought not be entered under the pretext of legality, right? Well, here's the principles that govern procedure in group decision making from the current manual, the one that they practice or claim to practice. or claim they're practicing, right? So what does this also bring to the court? Let's talk about this, because there was a methodology behind me doing it. Said, well, okay, court, they've created these multitudes of new offices which are against the Declaration of Independence, which we already know, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's go down through the 10 criteria and prove which emoluments are not only illegal, but unlawful. Because if they're unlawful, they're absolutely not legal, right? So, yes, we need emoluments that manage things like roads and bridges, power grid, water supply, yada, yada. What we don't need, and what is unlawful, and this goes back to my questions, how is the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, ASFA, anything less than state-sponsored human trafficking, a death penalty offense as articulated by the World Court? I think that's a pretty intelligent question, and I'm sure that there are tons of people out there who would totally agree with me asking it. And I think the Supreme Court is the one that needs to answer it. How is Title IV et al., meaning all of it, of the Social Security Act, as far as I'm concerned, and it's an unlawful emolument, anything but practicing barratry and extortion under the color of law? Knowing unlawful incarceration is the end result as clearly established in this case, the case that's before them right now, pursuant to the cited unjust conviction law and cited treatises. I even took and repeated the treatises that I was talking about. Malicious prosecutions and false arrest and imprisonments. Right there. That is a carefully crafted question based in law, a treatise of law, which is also a principle, something that is based in principles and practices. The difference between the theory and the practice. I am bridging the gap between the theory and the practice. That's what loss prevention does. That's how we solve problems, right? So, again, the rest of this is the methodology. Well, there must be no fraud, trickery, or deception, right, resulting in injury to another member. I'm a member of this meeting, of this proceeding, and I've been injured. How do we know that? Hang on a minute. Let's go back down to the thing here. And, oh, there's the extortion. $1,590, right? Paid on May 2nd. There's the proof. You want proof? There's your damn proof, right? So, just for the sport of it, let's go back to where we were here. Right here. And so there's our fraud, trickery, blah, deception, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, we know it's not valid because they didn't get through number 9. But in order to be valid, any action decision of a body must not violate any applicable law, Article 1, Section 11, or constitutional provision. Well, not only is that an applicable law, it's a constitutional provision. Article 1, Section 11 of the Florida State's Constitution. And every state has its own, right? So if you don't have one under the Privileges and Immunities Clause, Article 4, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, you can certainly use mine, right? And I'd go and stand beside anybody who wants to do that any day of the week, twice on Sunday. So here again, the special law detracting from the general law, that's those corporate bureaucrats, right? Claiming a position and standing that they don't have in law. That's an unlawful emolument. Why? Because these political debates are to be handled in the legislature. And let's show how we know that. Because I got one queued up here that is going to answer that very issue right there. And it happened in Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings. Let it roll.
It's predictable that every confirmation hearing now is going to be overblown, politicized circus. And it's because we've accepted a new theory about how our three branches of government should work, and in particular, how the judiciary should work. What Supreme Court confirmation hearings should be about is an opportunity to go back and do schoolhouse rock civics for our kids. We should be talking about how a bill becomes a law and what the job of Article 2 is and what the job of Article 3 is. So let's try just a little bit. How did we get here and how can we fix it? I want to make just 4 brief points. Number 1, in our system, the legislative branch is supposed to be the center of our politics. Number 2, it's not. Why not? Because for the last century, and increasing by the decade right now, more and more legislative authority is delegated to the executive branch every year. Both parties do it. The legislature is impotent, the legislature is weak, and most people here want their jobs more than they really want to do legislative work, and so they punt most of the work to the next branch. Third consequence is that this transfer of power means the people yearn for a place where politics can actually be done. And when we don't do a lot of big actual political debating here, we transfer it to the Supreme Court. And that's why the Supreme Court is increasingly a substitute political battleground in America. It is not healthy, but it is what happens. And it's something that our founders wouldn't be able to make any sense of.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Ben Sasse just sat there and pointed to a new Justice Kavanaugh and explained to him, look, we know what you're in for. We know why you're in for it. And we're going to need to work with you guys to help us figure out how we take this power back from these bureaucrats. And the answer is you take the pencil has got 2 ends. It's got the lead side that you write with and the eraser side that you erase with. You go in there and you erase it. Same thing with the bar card. It doesn't belong there, right? You erase it because those bar cards are not part of the people. They don't come from we the people. They come from a bureaucratic mechanism that we declared independence from, that foreign power, right? And I've said this repetitively since I've started this, and I'm going to keep beating this horse until we get it right. So keep going, Ben, because it gets better.
And fourth and finally, we badly need to restore the proper duties and the balance of power from our constitutional system. So point 1, the legislative branch is supposed to be the locus of our politics, properly understood. Since we're here in this room today, because this is a Supreme Court confirmation hearing, we're tempted to start with Article 3. But really, Article 3 is the part of the Constitution that sets up the judiciary. We really should be starting with Article 1, which is us. What is the legislature's job? The Constitution's drafters began with the legislature. These are equal branches, but Article 1 comes first for a reason.
Okay. Now we're getting to the crux of it, right? Article 1. What is all of the work that I've been doing based on the Declaration of Independence? Where has it been focused? Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, right? Now, continuing on.
And that's because policymaking is supposed to be done in the body that makes laws. That means that this is supposed to be the institution dedicated to political fights. If we see lots and lots of protests in front of the Supreme Court, that's a pretty good litmus test barometer of the fact that our republic isn't healthy. Because
okay. Why is he talking about political fights? Because all political power is inherent, in the people, right? So we talk about, why do we have to do these affidavits and change your position and standing? And, you've got all these never perfect documents and, follow this process to do this and follow that process to do that. I'm like, my version of what I'm doing is saying, why the hell is all that necessary? And who created the method, or who created the thing that makes it necessary, knowing that none of it's lawful? That's a political question, right? The judges know that it's a political question. They know that I've asked the political question properly. It's called a parliamentary inquiry. Why? because I'm questioning the process. I'm not questioning what the law says. I know what the damn law says, right? I'm questioning the process, the abuse of that process, the usurpation of the power, right? So, moving on.
Because people shouldn't be thinking they are protesting in front of the Supreme Court. They should be protesting in front of this body. The legislature is designed to be controversial, noisy, sometimes even rowdy, because making laws means we have to hash out the reality that we don't all agree. Government is about power. Government is not just another word for things we do together. The reason we have limited government in America is because we believe in freedom. We believe in souls. We believe in persuasion. We believe in love. And those things aren't done by power. But the government acts by power. And since the government acts by power, we should be reticent to use power. And so it means when you differ about power, you have to have a debate. And this institution is supposed to be dedicated to debate and should be based on the premise that we know since we don't all agree, we should try to constrain that power just a little bit, but then we should fight about it and have a vote in front of the American people. And then what happens? The people get to decide whether they want to hire us or fire us. They don't have to hire us again. This body is the political branch where policymaking fights should happen. And if we are the easiest people to fire, it means the only way the people can maintain power in our system is if almost all the politicized decisions happen here, not in Article 2 or Article 3. So that brings us to a second point. How do we get to a place where the legislature decided to give away its power? We've been doing it for a long time. Over the course of the last century, but especially since the 1930s and then ramping up since the 1960s, a whole lot of the responsibility in this body has been kicked to a bunch of alphabet soup bureaucracies. All the acronyms that people know about their government or don't know about their government are the places where most actual policy making, kind of in a way, lawmaking is happening right now. This is not what Schoolhouse Rock says. There's no verse of Schoolhouse Rock that says give a whole bunch of power to the alphabet soup agencies and let them decide what the governance decision should be for the people, because the people don't have any way to fire the bureaucrats. And so what we mostly do around this body is not pass laws. What we mostly do is decide to give permission to the secretary or the administrator of bureaucracy X, Y, or Z to make law-like regulations. That's mostly what we do here. We go home and we pretend we make laws. No, we don't. We write giant pieces of legislation, 1,200 pages, 1,500 pages long, that people haven't read, filled with all these terms that are undefined, and we say the secretary of such and such shall promulgate rules that do the rest of our dang jobs. That's why there's so many fights about the executive branch and about the judiciary, because this body rarely finishes its work. And the House is even worse. I don't really believe that. It just seemed like you needed to try to unite us in some way. So I admit that there are rational arguments that one could make for this new system. The Congress can't manage all the nitty-gritty details of everything about modern government, and this system tries to give power and control to experts in their fields, where most of us in Congress don't know much of anything, or about technical matters for sure, but you could also impugn our wisdom if you want. But when you're talking about technical, complicated matters, it's true that the Congress would have a hard time sorting out every final dot and tittle about every detail. But
now, let's talk about technical matters. Technical matters are based in what? Science, right? I use electricity to explain technical matters a lot because, like the way I think, its explanation of how it works also comes from mathematics, right? Ohm's law and power equations, and so on and so forth, and the theories of how you measure resistance and ohms, and power in wattage, like light bulbs. They're measured in wattage. That's what the little numbers on there mean, right? So, yes, Ben is absolutely correct. The more we advance in science, right, the more difficult legislation becomes, and that's where the divide happens. And here's another problem. You've got all of these ridiculous, quote-unquote, fictional sciences, right? Political science, social science. You know, pick any one of these new academic departments that they call a science, but there's no methodology or there's no way to go through and duplicate in any given set of conditions the arguments and the things that they're teaching. It's nothing but a bunch of BS and word salad, right? So you end up spending a bunch of money to go to a university to learn what? Word salad. Nothing. You don't learn anything about science, and if you dare question the word salad, you're labeled as somebody who is promoting hate speech. Oh, God, here we go with that again. Keep going, Ben.
The real reason at the end of the day that this institution punts most of its power to executive branch agencies is because it's a convenient way for legislators to have to be able to avoid taking responsibility for controversial and often unpopular decisions. If people want to get reelected over and over again, and that's your highest goal, if your biggest long-term thought around here is about your own incumbency, then actually giving away your power is a pretty good strategy. It's not a very good life, but it's a pretty good strategy for incumbency. And so at the end of the day, a lot of the power delegation that happens from this branch is because the Congress has decided to self-neuter. Well, guess what? The important thing isn't whether or not the Congress has lame jobs. The important thing is that when the Congress neuters itself and gives power to an unaccountable fourth branch of government, it means the people are cut out of the process. There's nobody in Nebraska. There's nobody in Minnesota or Delaware who elected the Deputy Assistant Administrator of Plant Quarantine at the USDA. And yet if the Deputy Assistant Administrator of Plant Quarantine does something to make Nebraskans' lives really difficult, which happens to farmers and ranchers in Nebraska, who do they protest to? Where do they go? How do they navigate the complexity and the thicket of all the lobbyists in this town to do executive agency lobbying? They can't. And so what happens is they don't have any ability to speak out and to fire people through an election. And so ultimately, when the Congress is neutered, when the administrative state grows, when there is this fourth branch of government, it makes it harder and harder for the concerns of citizens to be represented and articulated by people that the people know that they have power over. All the power right now, or almost all the power right now, happens off stage. And that leaves a lot of people wondering who's looking out for me. And that brings us to the third point. The Supreme Court becomes our substitute political battleground. It's only 9 people. You can know them, you can demonize them, you can try to make them messiahs, but ultimately, because people can't navigate their way through the bureaucracy, they turn to the Supreme Court looking for politics. And knowing that our elected officials no longer care enough to do the hard work of reasoning through the places where we differ and deciding to shroud our power at times, it means that we look for 9 justices to be super legislators. We look for 9 justices to try to right the wrongs from other places in the process. When people talk about wanting to have empathy from their justices, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about trying to make the justices do something that the Congress refuses to do as it constantly abdicates its responsibility. The hyperventilating that we see in this process and the way that today's hearing started with 90 minutes of theatrics that are pre-planned with certain members of the other side here, it shows us a system that is wildly out of whack. And thus a fourth and final point. The solution here is not to try to find judges who will be policymakers. The solution is not to try to turn the Supreme Court into an election battle for TV. The solution is to restore a proper constitutional order with a balance of powers. We need Schoolhouse Rock back. We need a Congress that writes laws and then stands before the people and suffers the consequences and gets to go back to our own Mount Vernon if that's what the electors decide. We need an executive branch that has a humble view of its job as enforcing the law, not trying to write laws in the Congress's absence. And we need a judiciary that tries to apply written laws to facts and cases that are actually before it. This is the elegant and the fair process that the founders created. It's the process where the people...
There it is right there. Make any decisions. This is the reason we petition the legislature, right? It's also one of the reasons why when I went through, this is a good time to reshare this because this is going to bring home a lot of what I've been saying since I started this. Going back to this document, this complaint where I called this meeting back in December of last year. This is the reason it's called injunctive relief, right? I'm wanting the Congress to do this. It's the reason I called a meeting between 3 houses of Congress, right? Not just the one. I would be standing there representing in D.C., right? Pick a position, okay? I'm standing in D.C., willing to stand in front of God and everybody, tell my story, let these facts be submitted to a candid world, right? Spill my guts all over the damn place to prove the point that you can't do this, because I can tell you right now, I happen to be in a unique position. I've never committed a crime, and I damn sure I'm not guilty of the crap that they're trying to throw at me, right? So much so to the point even the bureaucrats themselves are going, yeah, we have to admit that, yeah, that allegation just ain't true, man. Okay, well, here's where it gets ugly for Congress, right? Congress now has to go back through, along with the courts, and say, how many people are in jail that don't really belong there, right? Let's go back to this. Non-violent offenders first. That's where we started this, and this is going to be where I'm going to conclude it, because this is what we're talking about. The majority of these non-violent offenders, excuse me, that they're targeting do come from different minority communities that have self-medicated. Drinking, smoke a joint, whatever the thing is they're doing now. I don't even know what the hell half that crap is called. But the point is even doctors refer to it as self-medicating, right? They're trying to numb the pain. Well, they may not know how to fight for them, but somebody damn sure had to. So I know I'm not going to be around forever, kids, and I get that. I know you kids have probably been told all kinds of horse shit about me. None of it's true. And you're probably not going to believe it until it comes from somebody other than me. And guess what? I got time. I'll wait as long as it takes. So, but in the meantime, you can make your own decisions. You're intelligent human beings. And you can notice that the work that I'm doing, it's all based on you kids. Every word of this is for you kids. So anybody tells you that I've abandoned you, they're full of shit. Period. End of discussion. And I want to see them say it to my face, because I can tell you right now, ain't none of them got a pair of stones big enough to even try it. So that said, I'm going to go ahead here and go back to ending this thing, and I'm going to get this posted. This is not going to be a typical live feed. This is going to just be a video, the way I was originally doing this. So anyway, on that note, if you kids got any questions or anybody has any questions, I'm sure I'll catch them in the comments section. So on that note, everybody, much love and peace.